if there's anything I've come to appreciate about just my career in medicine and working in the outdoors and working with other people and observing this whole process is beginning to understand consciousness a little bit better. And more importantly, our perception and ultimately, how it is that we learn. Because we're taught information, and what we find out is that over time, well, our beliefs around that information change. And because of that, we evolve, which is a beautiful thing. We change. And so we're not static creatures. There isn't anything in this existence that continues to be the same. We keep changing our beliefs. And so, for instance, this little guy, for instance, when I was a kid and I was in school, in science I was taught, it's like, well, they're not sentient. They don't have emotions and they don't feel. And so therefore, well, they're in our service. And so while that was beneficial to our end goal, our means in terms of using animals, it was often inhumane. And so today, because we find that practice inhumane, we now have more compassion for animals. And so our belief about how animals interact has changed. And so if you've ever wondered why animals are put in custody of people who have emotional issues to deal with, PTSD, depression, etc., well, it's simply because the animals can perceive and they want to try to help us change what it is that we're feeling. They want to reconnect us back to the whole. Now, this whole idea of perception is quite interesting because what we're doing is we're communicating with one another constantly through our behaviors and the feelings that we have inside. Yes, we're communicating through words, but more importantly, what is felt is, well, ultimately experienced on a deeper level. And so we're communicating through this field, and we're all part of this field. And so what this field allows us to do is to communicate with everything that is sentient. And what the best science tells us today is that everything is sentient. Everything is conscious. Yes, yeah, like even rocks are conscious. They're just super dense, and so they're not changing very quickly. But trees are truly alive, right? Like, we know this. We don't see them grow. We make notice of them growing over time. We don't see it in the split second. And we often have the same experience around other people. Now, if we're all communicating through the field and can communicate with anything sentient in the field, I argue that maybe the most important practice that we could bring into play is gratitude, compassion, and thankfulness. And specifically, we do that with one another, and we do it through words, we do it through actions, and sometimes it is just felt, expressed through emotion. And ultimately, we could change our world, we could change our environment if we were expressing this gratitude all the time, if everybody was doing it, if everyone was communicating in the field. Imagine the power of 8 billion people communicating all at the same time, the same feeling and intention. We could change the world like that. Now, one of the practices that I brought into my recreational experience, when I'm spending time with friends, and even with clients, is taking a time to give thanks to the land. Yeah. So we get a lot when we recreate with the world. When we jump in the water and swim in the ocean, or whether we're climbing mountains or skiing or whatever it is. Like, we get feelings of accomplishment, we get feelings of connection, we get feelings of freedom. And so ultimately, what I'm suggesting is that we put that back into this field. We take a minute and we say a little prayer, or we just say thank you, or we just stay silent. And we thank the land for what it is that it's given us. Because when we separate ourselves from the land, we separate ourselves from food. We separate ourselves from who we are, and we separate ourselves from what we can be. And our greatest resource is this earth. So maybe the most original and the beginning of the environmental movement started with just pausing and giving thanks. Because when you begin to become aware of what you're grateful for, well, maybe you begin to protect that differently Think about that.